I know that I said I was going to make a Brunel video. I'm getting to it. Everybody knows now that Trump's got coronavirus. A couple of things in relation to how this is going to impact the country and the election and his stance on coronavirus. It's going to really come down to whether or not he lives and whether or not his symptoms are brutal. And we're going to know that by how much we see him over the next couple of weeks. Obviously, if he dies, the game's over. The election's lost. And it probably will start a civil war. Because Trump is the thing that's holding this country together. I know. What are you talking about? It's not the way that anybody wants to see him go out. Now, speaking about seeing him go out, I never use this word, but I gotta say, Twitter, Reddit, oh, fucking ghouls, man. Seriously vile motherfuckers. I couldn't even read that much or take screenshots to use anything as an example because I can't do it. I mean, dude, listen, I don't like Biden as a presidential choice, but I don't think like if I was sitting down at a bar having a drink or something, I wouldn't talk to him. I think he'd be fucking fun to talk to, actually. And if he was a local politician on a smaller scale, I'm sure I would vote for him, at least in some instances. So I don't hate the man. If he had corona, if he had corona, dude, I don't be like, I really want him to die because I disagree with his fucking policies. You know, I'm not perfect. I'm not a good Christian. I'm not a fucking person who's ever claimed to be without fucking, at times, petty or shitty thoughts. So I'm sure there's some people I dislike enough where if I found out that they had it, I'd be like, oh well. But actually saying I wish somebody would die if they had it, and said in relation to politics, I mean, I wouldn't say that about Biden or Kay Harris. I wouldn't say that. So, and on top of that, assuming you're one of those people that dislikes Trump so much that you would say that, he is also our fucking president. And I guess you don't really understand how politics works, man. We need to have a strong president in this country. We need to have a strong figure at the tiller. You know, you can't have a weak man or woman at the flag at the top of the nation. I don't understand. I guess maybe it's also that you don't understand how many enemies we have, or maybe you're one of them. Maybe you're one of them people that's so deep into the BLM or Antifa, for example, that you don't really understand who it is that you're helping by doing what you're doing. But there are other countries, governments, and there are other individuals throughout the world that would take this country the second that they thought there was enough weakness or enough of an opening. And whether they take it through this elaborate thing that's going on right now, manifesting itself as protests under the guise of racial equality, which is actually anything but that, who have gotten into bed with the anti-fascist, fascist Antifa, whether it's doing it that way or whether it's doing something more direct. So wishing that Trump gets sicker or that he die or that he have permanent debilitating problems, man, you fucking people need to check yourself before you wreck yourself, for real. Here are the implications from this. Trump lives, especially if he recovers in 2 weeks or less. I guess the best litmus test for this is going to be whether or not the next debate stays on schedule, because it's one whole day inside of the quarantine. They might elect to change it, because if you say the quarantine's 14 days, but then you only quarantine for 13 days, you're making it look like you don't believe the quarantine needs to be 14 days. They should just simply push it back one day. Assuming that they decide that they're going to roll with that, he comes back out and he's fine. He's not getting on stage with a walker. He's wearing an oxygen tank. He has the same level of energy as he had the other night and every other time that we see him. The election's in the bag. End of story. If that debate gets put off, especially if it gets put off after Trump or Trump's people say, let's push this out 1 or 2 days, but still have it so everything else stays on schedule, and then Biden says, well, I refuse to do it because I think the president's taking a risk with his health that's unnecessary by trying to force this, and or we should just do this debate via videos in different parts of the country. If he tries to do something like that, I'm not sure how it would go, but man, it is not going to look good for him. And it's not what this country needs either. I usually skip presidential debates because they're fucking boring. Because of Trump, this is like an event for me. I didn't even watch the ones with Hillary. I didn't even care. I just assumed Hillary Clinton was going to win because I live in this shit-ass Democrat area. And all you heard was Hillary, Hillary, Hillary. So I just assumed it was like that everywhere because that's what the media represented. I have never been a fan of the media. I've always been against the way that they are slanted with everything that they do. But I also wasn't going into it deeper and seeing just how much they omit, where how many times a day they take facts and run with something that they know isn't true to make a story out of it. I generally, just to maintain my mental health previous to these last 6 months, I really just didn't pay attention to the news. When something was really big, then I paid attention to it because it was in my face. And I mean really big, like September 11th. I'll tell you, I just don't watch it because I know how it is and I know how toxic it is. And I never agree with anybody on anything anyways. Never. I mean, once in a while, like a part of something that somebody says, but I'm such an independent, libertarian leaning independent that nobody there ever represents anything that I fucking believe in, that I think, that I want to say. And they always talk like a bunch of fucking bitches. Well, sir, I think, well, I don't think that's correct, or you sir, and it's always just a bunch of fucking bullshit and glad handling, and they're all working to suck the same fucking cock. The one that, it ain't the one attached to me. It ain't the one attached to the rest of the American people. It's the one attached to elites and fucking big businesses. That's why I say again, emphatically, Trump is an independent candidate who happened to have to run as a Republican to get support from enough people to win the presidency. He is really the new face of politics, and he is a Republican right now, and if he stays in another term, the Republican Party itself might change into something that I could believe in. And they've got some positive signs, okay? And it's going to go just a little bit into what I want to talk about with Burnell and his opinion of this, but African-American conservatives, that's not an entirely new thing, but previous to the Trump era, I get the whole Uncle Tom, because the typical boring conservative is slightly to significantly religious, always pro-life, always had several other very cookie cutter opinions and responses to everything. But Trump's not like that. The religious right doesn't have to fucking like it. Freedom of choice in this country, even without fucking Roe v. Wade. Freedom of fucking choice for a certain part of the pregnancy process. Whether it's the morning after pill up to a certain date when a child is still something previous to a human being, but an early developmental stage. It's not the same as murdering your kid. I personally, for myself, and any woman I might accidentally or intentionally impregnate, would never want to do that, even at the early stages. Unless she's completely crazy. But seriously. So to me, it's a freedom of choice issue. Once it gets up to a certain point, then it's a pro-life versus pro-choice, and then I would lean with the pro-life, but I would still say, but now if you start to legislate to people that they can't do it, especially after they've been doing it for so long, now you're really infringing on their constitutional rights. Which, by the way, is how I think this new Supreme Court judge is going to look at this shit. And you just heard what I said. I wouldn't challenge the right for abortion. I would just put clear parameters on when it's a pre-human life versus when it's actually a human life. Still leave it up to you. Just know that if you're a 7-month abortion, you're killing a child. You may as well kill your infant. But on that note, there have been a lot of cultures throughout history who've done shit like that. And it's never been a morality issue until we get to puritanical, Quaker-based United States. Fucking clown Bill Maher talking about Catholicism. versus Lutherans, Protestants, and all the different sects of the Christian religion. But really, it's the Quakers and the Puritans that have had the most influence on early legislation in this country that made some of the laws that just kept getting, revamped and then reapplied. So that's really where that comes from. So Trump recovers from this. This is going to just about seat his election. It's going to make him look like he's a genius because not only was he not going crazy mentally over the mask the entire time, but everything that he's been saying about his methods of treating it were accurate, or at least accurate enough, because he survived. And even with the argument the president has, he's going to have the best health care in the world, it doesn't matter because he's going to do everything that doctors are doing for everybody else. They'll do it faster for him. They'll monitor him and they'll test him more because he is an important person. But it's going to be the same shit, and that in the end is going to fuck them badly. The Democrats, the left. So this is going to be kind of a fail or bust thing. Because if he dies, that Biden wins, and winning on top of having Trump die from coronavirus, this country is done. A couple of predictions about that. Lockdowns will happen. There'll be some stimulus because he'll want to look good and he'll want to match what Trump did. If Trump gave $1,200, he'll want to give $2,400 or something like that. If Trump gives one payment, he'll want to give two. The country don't have the money to do that. He'll do that anyways. He'll come up with some crazy bullshit legislation to appeal the people about some of the shit that he was saying, but essentially nothing that he's going to do is going to stimulate the economy. There will be nowhere for that money to come from. But even before we get to that point, 6 months or a year down the road, where that becomes the problem, even before that, this is what's going to happen. A lot of people, all the Trump supporters to an extent, but especially the super patriots, right, are going to have some kind of meltdown. There's going to be more opposition to the protests that are ongoing. The opposition is going to become violent. Police are going to get put into the position over and over again about taking a side. It's essentially going to come down to the cops will have 100 cops somewhere where they think there's going to be a protest, and there will be 500 BLM and 500 of whatever other group of patriots show up, or more at a time, and the police will become overwhelmed, and they will get to the point where they're just going to have to decide to completely move out of the way or walk to one side or the other. And it's going to be nasty. It's another thing people don't really understand is, like I said, Trump is very important. He's the thing that holds us together. All of that hatred and anger from the left, not Antifa and the extreme BLMs, they're already obviously off their fucking nut and going, I wouldn't say full out, but they're going pretty strong, doing a lot of stuff that they know they shouldn't be able to just get away with. There's going to be a lot of people who kind of support that, or who support it in principle, etc., who are then going to become galvanized, polarized, and get in there and actually do something. And it's going to happen even more so on the right, because nobody on the right, basically, except for these small militias, has done anything. It's all been majority on the left. So both of these groups are going to see, with Trump there, people on the right stand down because everybody on the left, aside from the Antifa and BLM that are in the streets, the rest of them just direct all their hatred and angst and anger directly at him, especially at his tweets. And that's kind of the way that they therapeutically work through it. He absorbs that for the rest of us, which includes people on the left who are not out there doing stuff, even though they don't realize it. He's really protecting everybody by being the lightning rod. And nobody in this exact moment is going to be able to replace him and do exactly that same thing. So without that lightning rod there, the lightning's just going to fucking spread everywhere. Once pockets of the country, starting of course in urban areas, start to fall in, it's going to get so much worse so fast, and it's going to spread, and it's going to go to areas where people think are untouchable. I'll give you an example, okay? Local news. Actually was saving this for a different video, but I didn't want to make that video really, so I'm going to burn this up here. yesterday. I guess I should start with this to make it make sense. My city had 100 murders last year. Chicago had 400. My city has 350,000 people. Chicago has 2.7 million people. Baltimore has 350,000 people and had about 300 murders last year. So my city this year is at 170 or so murders so far. But Chicago has 575 murders so far. So they're 175 up from last year at this point. We are at 50 past our year-end total from last year at this point in the last 24 hours. 5 people were shot Wednesday evening in separate incidents, and then 1 dead. And then right after that, 7 people were shot outside of a funeral home. Just like that shooting outside the funeral home in Chicago. And then there was another one a little bit later, but that was a one-on-one. The one in Chicago was a mass shooting and a drive-by. The same thing happened here yesterday. 7 people shot. I am not sure at this point how many died, but the only reason that my city doesn't have 350 or 400 murders this year, eclipsing even Baltimore, is because these people just aren't shooting accurately. The shootings have been there. We keep a statistic how many people get murdered every year. What we don't keep a statistic of that I know of is how many shootings we have per year. But as I have the local news pop up on my phone, and I've trained the algorithm for that app to direct me toward violent crime first, I get notifications of every shooting that happens in the city. Not even the state, not even the county, the fucking city. I did not start at the beginning of the year tallying because I didn't know I was going to have to. But if I had to speculate the tally, we have 175 dead that I know of. Our year average is about 100. This year, with a good push, we can match Baltimore. However, if we were just tracking shootings that were intended to kill somebody, we would be at 4 times where we were at last year. Now try to imagine what happens when people become more radicalized than now. Defunding continues. The sentiment, if not actually doing it in practice. Police are doing what they're continuing to do right now, staying backed off. The country has an anticlimactic election because really everybody's expecting it to be exciting regardless of what side they're on. It's still kind of like a Super Bowl. Everybody wants to see what the fuck is going to happen. How are people really going to vote secretly when nobody knows what they really think? How are they going to vote in that voting booth, and is Trump going to win? And is he going to win by a landslide? A lot of people think it's impossible, and some people think that's exactly what's going to happen. Some people who are Trump detractors think that's exactly what's going to happen. But those are the same people that think that the entire country is super racist and that Donald Trump is the fucking lightning rod of white supremacy, actually, because that's what he is, which I obviously don't agree with that. Anticlimactic finish of him dying, say, then whoever the candidate is can't stand up to Biden because they just don't have the presence and star power. Biden wins, this police shit continues, these neighborhoods get worse. Then what, man? Country goes on lockdown. Masks become mandatory everywhere all the time, even outside when you're by yourself. And some counties, which have already tried this, they were trying this months ago, will actually say, and you have to wear a mask in your home. And they'll come and check. There'll be some that'll do that. Super liberal areas, they will make crews who go door to door to be sure everybody actually has a mask on. It ain't gonna happen everywhere, but it'll happen in some places. And the pissing on the civil liberties it'll be incredible. The money will go in the toilet. It'll be chaos. The country will burn. All this will happen if Donald Trump dies. It won't be like this if he lives and he loses. And really, the way the people on the left are looking at the way they were talking on Twitter and Reddit today, just a little, tiny little bit that I could stand to read. Those people, I would think, they want to see Trump lose. They want to see him lose bad, or they want to see him lose by the balance of mail-in votes, switching electoral college votes. They want to see him lose. I would think even they would get pissed off and feel a little cheated if they win by default. It's going to cause fucking chaos. But the opposite is true. If he lives and if he's healthy and if he has his energy level up by the time of that next debate, or even before that, then it pretty much solidifies his win. That's it.